Converted Man here. Today I'm going to analyze this video called Proving God Without the Bible. This is a 5-video series presented by Bob, last name I won't even try to pronounce. First video that he has in this series is an introduction video, so there's nothing for me to analyze there. I'm starting my analysis here on his second video.
In this video, I need to give you a rule and 2 tools with which to evaluate my claims.
I have a far better idea. I'll just use the rules of logic and see where that gets me.
The rule is that we have to agree that truth exists. We have to agree that truth exists, we can know truth.
I am going to assume that by truth he means reality. Reality can be known, and I have no issue with that if that's what he means. It depends, because truth is sort of nebulous, so I have to kind of tentatively grant this idea. Whatever is true regardless whether we understand it, know about it, or accept it. In that sense, I would agree that yes, the truth is there for us to discover, but we might never know about it due to the nature of reality. It might forever be a mystery to us.
If someone says there is no truth, I want you to look them in the eye and say, is that true?
You're ill-equipping people to handle argumentation by that very simplistic statement. If I said the only truth is that there is no truth, and they say, oh, is that true? I could say, yes, I just said that's the only truth. Why not explain to people that the way to respond is to say that whoever makes the claim has the burden of proof? Whether that be an argumentation or empirical evidence of some sort or a test, what is your proof that this statement is correct? Please present that.
The first tool I need to give you is something called a first principle. You don't learn first principles, you just know first principles. You know first principles based on living in our world, observing things around you, asking questions, getting answers.
Living in our world, asking questions, and getting answers is all part of learning. Why would you say that you don't learn it? You just know it. There is nothing that we just know, quote unquote. We must learn everything. So because this is completely false, I'm going to say it's an outright lie. You do learn first principles if they are indeed a thing.
I'm going to give you 2 first principles to use to evaluate my 3 proofs of God. The first principle goes like this, that anything that has a beginning has a cause.
Anything has not been observed, or another way to say that would be everything has not been observed. What we can say is, as far as we have observed thus far, things that come into existence seem to have a cause. Now, why would you say it that way rather than saying it in the absolute way? Several reasons. One, it is honest, and it gives you the full information. There are things we have not observed that might not have a cause, either because they've always existed or just because they have no cause. Even if that doesn't make sense to us, that might be the way that those things are. We don't know. We haven't observed them yet. It's possible. We're not going to say that it is, but we're going to say the things that we're talking about right now are the things that we have observed. Then you say it is possible that they only seem to have a cause, that we could be wrong. Why would you say it that way? Because that's how science works. If you're going towards a scientific method in this, and I would be more in favor of being in line with how science operates than not being in line with how science operates, then you have to observe that we could be wrong in what we are observing. Especially if you get into quantum mechanics. These things might be coming into existence with no cause, that they're just coming into existence because they are, and there is no cause behind that. It doesn't have to make sense. That might be the way things are. I don't know enough about quantum physics, nor do I think that we have done enough in that field to be able to say this is true either way. That is to say, we cannot say that things have no cause. We cannot say things will always have a cause. All we can do is give the full truth, which is, as far as we have observed, things seem to have a cause.
The second one goes like this, that whenever you see complex design in our world, you can infer a designer or an intelligence behind it.
This is an outright lie. It's not even a half-truth, because you can't infer that. In fact, inference cannot get you to the truth ever. If you really are concerned with getting to the truth, you cannot use inference to get to that. Whatever we might infer about things will not get us to the truth. We might get lucky and guess at the truth, but it is not a way to get to the truth. Inference is not a tool to do that with. So that is one part of this outright lie. The other part is that we often see what appears to be designed, but it is in fact not designed at all. For example, in this particular rock formation, you might see a face and a head dressing. In this mountain, you might also see a face. And finally, here's a person. But this person is actually just a rock that's on the planet Mars and is not a person at all. It just makes us want to identify it as a person because that's how our brains work. Rather than inferring that something is designed when it has complexity, what we need to do is understand it as best as we can. This argument is going to inevitably lead us to, later on, probably an argument where, and I haven't watched this whole video series, by the way, so I don't know this yet, but I'm going to assume a few things. It's probably going to lead us into, oh, look at how complex DNA is, it must be designed, or look at how complex life is, it must be designed, or look at how complex the universe is, it must be designed. Anything that you can say is complex would then therefore be designed. Oh, look, it's a snowflake, it must be designed. Didn't I just say that in a different video? I did. But at any rate, no, just because it's complex doesn't mean that it's designed. Just because it appears designed doesn't mean that it's designed. You need to do the actual science to investigate it.
Now, I need to caution you. I need to caution you strongly here in that sometimes when you begin discussing matters of God, people will want you to agree on a first principle that says that there are only material causes in the world. There's only naturalistic causes. There are no causes outside our universe.
I wouldn't try to get you to accept that, but how about this for an idea? We cannot know anything about what is outside, quote-unquote, of our universe, or if there is such a thing as outside our universe at all. We cannot know that at all because there has been no test of it, and there is currently no way to test it. So we can't know anything about it. Thus, we can't speak about things that might be out there.
If you agree to that, you have ruled out God before you've even looked at the evidence.
Not necessarily. You could be trying to argue for a God that's inside the universe, or maybe God is the universe itself. I suppose it would really depend on which version of God you're talking about, because some gods exist inside the universe, some gods exist as the universe, some gods exist apart from the universe, and so on and so forth. But if you're trying to say that you don't want me to say no to there being something potentially outside our universe, okay, I'll await for you to produce the scientific instrumentation that you're using. I guess it would be some sort of telescope or very powerful machine that I'm not aware of that can look outside our universe, proving that there is an outside, and that shows us what's out there. If you have that, it would be something that I've never heard about, but fine, we'll see how that works. If you don't have such an instrument, perhaps you have a logically coherent argument that there is something outside the universe. How you would know that would have to be part of that logically coherent argument, but I'll let you make that argumentation and presentation, because I'm not going to say that there isn't something outside the universe, although I am far more comfortable in saying that we couldn't know anything about it. And that's even tentative because maybe you have a way of knowing what is out there that I am unaware of. So I'll just wait for you to show me that particular piece of evidence and or give me that logically coherent argumentation.
Now, I'm not saying you won't look at the video information I give you and at the end say there is no God, and at that point you can believe anything you want.
Yes, it's true that you could believe anything you want, but you really shouldn't believe anything that you want. You should strive to try to believe only things that have empirical evidence for them, a repeatable test for them, and or a logically coherent argument for them. Everything else I think that you should be skeptical of.
The second tool I'm going to give you is something called a logical argument. A logical argument is made up of at least two statements about reality.
It's not a statement, it's called a premise. If you're going to talk about logic, you better freaking get the terminology right. Oh, that's irritating. I have to give you a logical fallacy for talking about logic. This is an outright lie. It's not a statement, it's a premise.
This works fine as long as both statements about reality are true.
So much more in logic. You've got the modus ponens, the hypothetical syllogism, the modus tullius, and the disjunctive syllogism. What you should have done is say, I'm going to talk about this one aspect about logic, which is a deductive argument. The other aspects of logic are linked below in the description box. Please go research them so you understand it as best as you can. But you didn't do that, so this is a half-truth. Bob, it's not looking good. You've got 6 logical fallacies already. The problem, Bob, is that we can't proceed from here. There's no reason to keep analyzing the rest of your series because already I have to be skeptical of your conclusion, whatever that conclusion might be. Even if that conclusion was the conclusion that I would want, I have to be skeptical of it within the rules of logic. So unless you're willing to correct these logical fallacies, I don't even need to analyze the rest of your presentation. You see, Bob, the one rule of logic that applies here that you didn't mention in your video is that unless and until we have a logically coherent argument, we have to be skeptical of your conclusion.